Hands up now if you think you could explain what tariffs are and historically why we have them. What are tariffs? No, really? What are tariffs? Well, all right, come in then, Keith. What are tariffs? What do they do? And why do we have them? Anybody? I could do a bit of it. I know what they are. And I think I know why. So all I can see happening, I know why Donald Trump wants to introduce tariffs to the entire world. I think the reasoning is, and if you can ever bring reasoning to a conversation about Donald Trump, is of course moot. Also, as one colleague just reminded me on the way downstairs, this is Trump we're talking about, so it is not beyond all possibility that he doesn't even do it in the end after all. I mean, he's got a sort of hokey-cokey approach to tariffs, hasn't he? He puts them in and then he takes them out again. I think the car companies had tariffs and then they didn't and then they did again. Mexico did. Didn't Mexico have tariffs? He put the left leg in, the left leg out, in, out, shake it all about. And then Canada did and then it didn't and then it did again. So, I mean, there is a chance that the tariffs that are set to be introduced to Europe are not going to happen, but I think it's a very slim chance. I think it's a very slim chance. And the question then hangs, why is he doing it? So I think if we are going to deploy reason when talking about Donald Trump, which is risky, the idea is in his sort of head that companies pay so much money to import, to export stuff to the States that the government will keep it all and be able to cut taxes. Is that not it? I think that is it. That's what he said. I mean, I've heard him say that. So the companies will pay so much money to export cars and everything else into the United States, 25% on everything, that they will raise so much money that they will then be able to cut taxes for the electorate. So it becomes a politically popular position until you ask yourself, how will the companies paying tariffs get the money back that they are being required to pay to the government? To which the answer will be, in large part, from their customers. So the price of everything will go up, perhaps not by 25% because they will take a hit on their profit margin. But generally speaking, a company is going to respond to the introduction of tariffs by increasing prices, which means the same people who are getting the putative tax cuts are also getting the fairly hefty price increases. So unless you're incredibly rich, whereby the tax cut is going to involve a heck of a lot more moolah, to use a technical term, than the price increases are going to get, this will not be good news. And I think you probably have to be very rich. You know, most people in this country, for example, take more out of the state than they put in. A huge number of people don't realise that they're on the other side of the median on that. They're actually on the take more out than once you add everything up, you know, up to and including your future old age pension, more people in this country take more out of the state than they put in, more than half. So in the States, the idea becomes that the super rich get a tax cut on 7, 8, 9, 10 figure sums and don't really notice that it's going to cost them a lot more. The price of eggs is going to go even higher. The price of cars is going, but they won't really notice that because they've got so much income and wealth. But for anybody who has, shall we say, a slightly more normal relationship with prices and shopping and the economy, I don't think they're going to come out of this better off. Right, things I don't understand. Andrew has written from Penzance, the rich will benefit from the tariffs too, as they are a price rise. How does that work? Don't the rich have to pay the higher prices as well? So this is why it's quite confusing. Keith, you're going to have to stop shaking your head like you know everything, because I'm finding it really distracting. Do you really know everything? Do you honestly know? Do you want to come in and explain it? No. Well, then stop shaking your head. Either come on and explain it all, or stop shaking your head like that, because you're making me nervous. I appreciate it's not mystery hour, says Ian. That's the kind of message I'm looking for at the moment. It possibly is tinfoil hat territory too, but are the US tariffs the equivalent of sanctions on Russia? If Trump is a friend of Russia, then surely Putin will be in favour of the tariffs. So I get those bits. Feel free to challenge anything that I've already said, but you have to do it using the power of speech, not just head shakes and nods, all right? 0345 6060973. So the importer pays... No, the export... Well, already there's some confusion over who's going to pay the tariffs in the first place. If he is imposing tariffs on the company that is selling stuff, it doesn't really matter whether it's the importer paying the tariff or the exporter. It's usually going to be the same person, isn't it? The exporter and the... But anyway, the importer pays the tariff. How does the importer get the money back that they've paid to the government in order to meet the tariff requirement? Answer, they put their prices up. So the importer pays the tariff. The idea is, historically, and this is correct from John, we'll get there, we'll make progress, we always do. Some days it is the callers who demonstrate considerably more cleverness than the presenter, and I don't think there are any prizes for predicting that today is going to be one of those days. What's that you say? Didn't you go to the London School of Economics? Yeah, I did, Mum, but I did philosophy, all right? Just chill. Hi, James. The idea of tariffs is to give your domestic industry an advantage over imports, thus protecting domestic jobs. If you keep your job in a factory because of this, you will be advantaged and will notice. Yeah, I mean, I also get that. But the idea that you're going to transplant huge levels of manufacturing to the United States of America in a time scale short enough or small enough to provide that sort of fillip is, I think, a little, shall we say, optimistic, but I hesitate to say this. It's possible there is some method in his madness. So it may be that I mean, could it possibly go well is a question that I think I asked Dimitri Grozobinski, our trade expert, the other day, and he was polite enough not to laugh at me, but I think history and precedent suggests it won't go well, but there is no other country quite like the United States of America, is there? Tariffs are a tool, writes Andy in Edinburgh, to stop foreign countries supplying cheap goods via cheap labour. Yeah, but it's going to hit us, mate. And no one calls us a country providing cheap goods with cheap labour. You might bring in a tariff on China or countries that deploy, child workers or slave labour, but generally speaking, if you're building minis in Birmingham, and don't at me if they no longer build minis in Birmingham, you are not employing cheap labour and you are not supplying cheap goods. So it goes on everything. So that doesn't work either. I remember when during Brexit, people claimed that freedom of movement was driving down wages because people were coming here from countries that were a bit less well off than we were and supposedly doing work for less. Those countries are now better off than we were. So why doesn't everybody move to Poland to drive lorries? So that's what tariffs do. That's what the idea is. I want clever commentary on this. 0345 6060973 is the number that you need. Paid to the government by the importer, which increases the retail price of the goods, but with the funds raised from the tariffs, the federal government, not individual states, can then lower taxes. I would add, and in fact Simon adds in his very neatly explained message, I would add, for the rich. This is about lowering taxes for the already very rich. So that's question number one. Is it? Is that what it is? Is it as simple as I've just made it sound? If I haven't made it sound simple, let me do it again using Simon in North London. Tariffs are paid to the government by the importer, which adds to the retail price of the goods. With the funds raised from the tariffs going into the federal government's pot, not the individual states' pots, Trump can use this funding bonanza to lower taxes for the rich. So there it is. Everybody who goes shopping is essentially paying money to the people who are already the richest in the United States of America. Correct or incorrect? 0345 6060973. And then you come to you, or rather I come to you, we come to you. When we started discussing the reality of Brexit, which even for a programme that got every single thing right with regard to the ludicrous decision to leave the European Union, moved rapidly from the arena of prediction into the arena of reporting, which is why people like Jacob Rees-Mogg have subsequently gone so silent, although Farage is still out there wanging away. The discovery was eased enormously by two callers, actually. Well, three in a way, if you include Kieran the van driver, because he told us exactly what was going to happen with regard to importing and exporting to and from the United Kingdom and the European Union after we ceased to be members of the single market. But the specific experiences of a cheesemonger, it's a great word, I haven't heard that one for a while, a cheesemonger and a vintner. That sounds agreeably Chaucerian, doesn't it? It sounds quite 19th century. Someone who flogs cheese and someone who flogs wine. So we spoke to a cheesemonger and a vintner about the changes that were going to be made to their lives. The cheesemonger very quickly realised that because he had so many countries in continental Europe, so many customers in continental Europe, he very quickly realised he was going to have to open a hub in continental Europe, or in Ireland, of course, in order to avoid the red tape and regulation, which are not tariffs, but which are trade obstacles, are frictions, in order to continue selling cheese to his customers at the price they were currently paying. Because if he had to observe the rules and regulations on exporting from the United Kingdom, then he was going to be hit with so much red tape, regulation and extra cost that he would have no choice but to pass it on to his customers. So a hub, to which I suppose you have to do some red tape to deliver all your cheese to one hub in the EU, but then every delivery out of that hub to all your individual customers in the EU falls under single market rules, so you don't have to fill in any forms or do any or deal with any red tape. And similarly, the vintner, the wine importer more than an exporter, described an absolute upending of the status quo, a complete assault upon his business. And because almost all of the media had told you that Brexit was going to be brilliant, in the case of many commentators, columnists, editors, broadcasters, presenters, they in fact encouraged you to, politicians, they encouraged you to vote for it. And because the British media is so horribly dominated by right-wing voices, they couldn't then tell you the truth about Brexit. If it had gone well, it would never have been off the front pages. Spoiler alert, it was never going to go well. If it had gone well, it would never have been off the front pages. Every triumph, every victory, every win, every jackpot, every benefit, every dividend, every incremental increase in our general national health would have been reported from the rooftops until you were sick of the sight of the story. But nothing did go well. Everything went badly. So the people that told you to vote for it, and I'm thinking of individuals as well as institutions, they went completely silent, which means even now you don't know the full extent of how much damage was done to, most obviously, our exporters and our importers who deal mostly with the European Union by the introduction of entirely unnecessary red tape and regulation, which the same individuals and institutions swore blind wouldn't happen because they were either too stupid to understand the facts or they were liars. And I'd like to do that today. I mean, do you know yet what will happen to your business? We have good trade with the United States. One reason why Keir Starmer somewhat naively thought that we might avoid the full impacts of the tariffs that are due to land tomorrow was because we don't have a trade deficit either way. There's a fair balance of trade between the United States and the United Kingdom. We don't sell them a lot more than we buy from them, which is something that winds Donald Trump up reportedly. So that was the reasoning, but it speaks of a fairly healthy export market to the United States. Do you understand yet how that is going to hit you? Do you understand yet how these tariffs are going to hit your business? And listen, it could be either a big business or a little business. It could be any business. The point is you currently have customers in the United States and you currently don't have to climb over trade barriers that will be introduced tomorrow. On what he is describing as Liberation Day. One politician this morning, I think it was Jonathan Reynolds, still keeping the hope alive that we might be able to negotiate some sort of carve-out, but that throws up a whole host of different problems, doesn't it? Because should we be seeking favoured nation status with an administration that looks increasingly fascistic? I don't know. But we do know that the likelihood of a deal is very, very slim. And the introduction of the tariffs, a 20 percentage point increase in tariffs on UK goods, looks exceedingly likely. It would automatically cut the size of the British economy by 1%. And again, the people and the individuals and the institutions that told you to vote for Brexit can report all this honestly as they continue to ignore the much bigger damage done to our economy by Brexit because they're corrupt and dishonest and thick. They will report this honestly because it's not their fault that it's happening, you see. So the 1% hit to the British economy and the possibility of tax rises going up. They won't report that honestly. They'll claim that's Rachel Reeves's fault. I suppose we should also acknowledge that much of the media that told you to vote for Brexit was also quite warm about Trump until relatively recently.